Welcome to Inkwell's Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today's special guest is Michael Hannon. Mike, what's up with you, man?
I'm chilling, man. How you?
I'm good. So it's doctor, right? I want to make sure
Yeah, I mean, my name is Michael. You got it right. We've known each other long enough. A credential I've earned is doctor, but my name is Mike or Michael. So whatever you feel most comfortable saying is cool with me.
I just want to put it out there, man. You put in the work, so you know you got to get that recognition. So, but yeah, you're right, man. We go back a ways. I guess 20 years now, right? I mean, that's
Easy.
that's easy, right?
Yeah.
We met in college. So I've seen some of the things that you've been doing, Mike, and I see genius everywhere now. And being the title of my workshop and the title of my book, you know, I reached out to you. I'm glad that you responded because I definitely see you operating in something very unique and specific to you that I wanted to talk to you about and talk to the people about because it's an encouragement for everybody that comes up against, you know, life throws a lot of unforeseen things at us, things that if we had to choose how our life played out, there's some things that will happen to us that we probably wouldn't choose. But the thing of it is, those things that seem to choose us are also destining us. I just make up a word. They're also projecting us into a place where we can be an advocate for other people and begin to use our talents, to use our gifts to impact the world around us in ways that we probably never even thought of.
Word. No, I totally agree. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I see that in you. So let's talk about it. So the first place that every question, every time I do this, I start off with one question, man, and I end with that question too. And it's this, Mike, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
Do I consider myself to be a genius? Yes. I've never thought about it that way, but if I consider having a unique set of skills, insights, experiences that may distinguish me from other folks and that have the potential anyway to make my world, wherever that is, a little bit better as a result of sharing those things, then sure, I'll claim genius.
All right, cool. Now, if I had not have introduced or kind of set the stage for how I'm defining genius, would you have still answered in the affirmative, or would you have been like, nah, I don't think I'm the one?
It's probably the latter. I probably wouldn't have said that. Words are important. Words shape our lives. Words shape our experiences because we use them to describe the things that we see, feel, and then the way we express those experiences. So, genius a lot of times has been held captive for certain people.
I like how you say that.
Yeah, so it's like, who gets the privilege of being identified as a genius, and that's in very strict and narrow terms. And so I, as a person who appreciates how intentional you are with your words and language, yeah, I can get on board with that because for far too long, people haven't been described in the ways that they deserve to be described because of a range of reasons like privilege and systems and preferences. So,
oh man,
but I wouldn't have done it first though.
You use some good words, man. Privileges and systems. Okay, yeah, we're gonna talk about these privileged systems. And in truth, man, I can't take credit for. I can take credit for the four pieces that I put together that we're going to talk about in this dialogue. But there's a movement that's happening by a cat named Bruce George. Have you heard of that name before?
I have not, but I do have a pen, so I'm jotting down notes.
Yeah. Bruce George is one of the main people. He was one of the main people behind Def Poetry Jam.
Okay.
Back in the day, right? And so I connected with him when that program went from being on HBO to being held or hosted digitally online. So you could submit poetry, you could submit haiku, and then every month they would announce a winner for the haiku of the month or the poem of the month. And I won for a poem of the month like way back. So, and he reached out to me and was like, yo, like salute, I see what you did. And I really appreciate that. And him and I just stayed connected. That's going on maybe 15 years ago.
Wow.
So I reached out to him maybe about 5 years ago because I'm like, what is Bruce up to? Because this dude he's like a mover and shaker. He always doing something. And he was like, man, I'm on this kick now where I'm trying to remove the elite status of this word genius and make it so that it's available to everybody. He was like, the movement is called, the branding is called Genius is Common. So I'm like, bet, like, what can I do to help you get this word out? He was like, man, he licensed me to put it on shirts and to start talking about it in the Midwest. He was still on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the key pieces that started to develop this workshop, right? And so the reason why I'm asking you, and I like your response, is because there is a connotation behind that word that either makes people respond one of two ways. Either it's an immediate no, because of other labels that other insecurities that we tend to like use those insecurities as things to define us rather than the things that are great about us. We hang on to the insecurities more so than anything else. And the other reaction, most of the time, is just this sense of humility. Like, I can't call myself that, can I? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, did you watch the Kanye West documentary Genius?
I absolutely did. Yeah. Yep.
Like, do you remember that conversation between him and Rhymefest, when Rhymefest was like, you can't do that. You can't call yourself a genius. Somebody else has to put that on you. And Kanye is like, forget what you heard, man. Like, nah. And the reason why, like, I can agree with Kanye to a degree, but he takes it to a whole nother level. And right. But I understand what he's saying because we saw his story. He went from everybody rejecting him, nobody trying to acknowledge him. He was like, well, hey, look, if everybody's going to reject me and cast me to the side, I need to self-affirm so that I know that I have something to contribute, even though everybody else around me is saying the opposite or not acknowledging what's in me. Mm-hmm. And I think that he's just had a very visceral reaction, like a knee-jerk reaction to all that rejection. And now he overshoots his genius now. But somewhere between those two reactions, there's a balance. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is that balance. What did you think about that exchange between him and Rhymefest?
It's interesting. My wife and I, we sat, LaShawn, who you know and care about deeply, we sat and watched all the installations of it. And that particular exchange was interesting because what I remember from it was Kanye West being unapologetic about how smart and how innovative, how insightful, how visionary he was. It's like he had, in the same way you described it, I don't want to be redundant, but in the same way you described it, like he had to believe in himself before anybody else believed in himself. He affirmed himself, same language you use. He affirmed himself before he waited for anybody else to affirm him in the spaces where he wanted access and wanted influence. And so, the exchange when he was just like, somebody said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, yo, your album is dope, or it's dope. And he was like, I'm glad you think so. I think so too.
Yeah.
Like as that kind of thing. It's like, it's almost kind of the same kind of rhetoric when people, when we see folks that we haven't seen in a while, be like, yo, it's good to see you. And they respond like, we typically assume that they're going to say, it was good to see you too. But instead they retort with, it's good to be seen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad that I'm here so that you can see me. And that's just as genuine as saying to somebody else, it's good to see you as well. Because it's self-affirming that I'm glad that I can be in a space that may offer something pleasant, helpful, useful in our experience together. Whether we're going to be together for 5 minutes, whether we're going to be together for the next 5 hours. And so, we shouldn't restrict that kind of label, that kind of adjective to an elite group of or perceived elite group of people in the ways that we've done in the past.
Yeah, man, we got to stop shrinking back. The world is waiting for us all to begin to affirm and say, you know what, I have something to offer, because the world is broken, man. And I believe that the brokenness of the world can be linked back to what we're talking about. It's not enough of us who are saying, I got something to contribute, and willing to say that out loud and not just say it, but back it up. If more of us did that, well, I'm getting off on a tangent. Let me bring it back to the next question. So the next question is this. Most of the time, the vast majority of people, when I ask them this question, they say like, no. And so then I follow up and say, well, tell me who comes to mind. First person, when you hear this word genius, who do you think of? So that's my question to you, Mike. Who do you think of when you think of genius? Somebody other than Kanye West.
Yes. Okay, fair enough. First person I think first person that comes to mind when I think of genius, I mean, I'd have to say, first person is my wife. I mean, if you're asking like an initial reaction, I think my wife is LaShawn Hannon, formerly Hutton, LaShawn Hutton Hannon.
You know what's funny? I was like, I was like, why can't I remember what LaShawn's name was before she got married? It's because it's so similar though.
Yes, yeah. So LaShawn and I go back to, we literally go back to high school. I've known her if I'm 46, I've known her for 30 years of my life. So I've known her more time than I've not known her.
Yeah.
And when I think of genius, I think about like, not just shared skills, abilities, insights, but sometimes the things that are exceptional that I don't see frequently. And I think the reason I would describe her as genius is because she has this uncanny ability or ways that I can't quite understand, at least in my natural mind, that describe the way she has insight. A lot of church folks, and I got a church history, and people talk about this notion of discernment, kind of just being able to make sense of things in real clear and simple ways that other folks can't.
Yeah.
And that helps her, obviously. It helps us as members of her family and her village and her community. As a member of historically Black sorority, it helps them. It helps wherever she's in space. The needle is able to move because of her ability, because of her measure of discernment. And so when I think of genius, if you're asking the first person I think of, I'm like, damn, like LaShawn is genius in that way. So that's the first person I think.
Yeah. You know what, man? That's what's on your shirt, man. That's dope.
Oh yeah, right. Dope Black Dad. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, just the dope part, as it relates to LaShawn.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not gonna take nothing away from that. I like what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
Let me be more specific in my questioning. Who do you think most people think of? First person they think of, like most people at large in the population. What's the name that comes to mind?
Genius. Somebody like I don't know, Plato or Socrates, or so, like somebody who's been positioned. Say Socrates, Plato, what?
You went between Plato and between Plato and Socrates. I thought I heard maybe you was just filling it, but I almost thought I heard you getting ready to say like an Einstein.
Yeah, certainly that came to mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, and essentially, I guess what I'm trying to convey is a person like Einstein, a person like Socrates, who really I don't have a whole lot of information about. Quite frankly, like. Yeah, I don't know their stories, but they have been positioned and described as people who have had, this wide and far-reaching, arguably global influence with some measure of insight. And I think maybe that's where we begin to tease apart and distinguish who is and isn't a genius. Is the influence local or is the influence global?
Yeah.
And does that have to be a criterion for who is and isn't described as genius? And so, yeah, I mean, it's a person who typically male, right?
Unfortunately, white,
very frequently white, very frequently straight or heterosexual, but somebody who's described as having some far-reaching influence to kind of help advance science, technology, or knowledge in general. So. Yeah. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but that's kind of what I think.
No, you're good, because he is, by and large, when I ask this question, the number one candidate that people come up with, like off the top of the head. And I'm not taking anything away from Einstein. To a certain degree, I am, because when I do when I have these visual charts, when I do workshops, and I have these set names, and you can interact like in real time and ask people to begin to put their numbers in. If it's a big enough group of people, you'll see the bars start to spike and go up real time, right? And one time I noticed, and I stopped myself, I was like, every person that I have up here who I'm trying to make sure they're recognizable by the myriad of people who are in this workshop, it's all white males. Yeah. And so I had to start being very intentional to start putting some other faces that don't all look the same in this mix to kind of like shake things up a little bit, because I'm like, I was guilty of it. Sure, I'm the one that was coming up with this whole presentation, and I was putting like all these white males in there. So I like that you even brought up that point. But Einstein is the quintessential person that people think of, but there's a problem with that, because when people think of Einstein and associate and attribute genius to him, they automatically disassociate it from themselves, because they're like, I don't know about E equals MC squared. I don't know what theory of relativity. I don't think I care what his theory of relativity is. So I must not be in the same, if I have no knowledge of what it is that he's doing or he has done, then I must not be a genius. And that's where we err. That's where we are incorrect, because Einstein was just one type of genius. Sure. He was in the lane of physics. He was in the lane of academia. And in fact, Mike, the thing that's interesting about Einstein's history is that when he was younger, his parents got that little note home from the teacher and was like, yeah, you might want to make sure he worked with his hands. He ain't all there.
Right.
Like, can you believe that?
Yeah. No, I can believe it, actually.
And if he had, and I think that he heard, like, the parents read the letter or he found it, so he knew that the teacher had said this about him. If he had subscribed to that, we would have been robbed of some really essential things that now govern how we function in the world.
Word.
And even when he got in college, he was that one student that was daydreaming and staring out the class, staring out the window, and the professor was like, "Hello, Einstein, like, are you here? Are you present?" But this brother was imagining what it would be like to ride a beam of light from the sun to the earth. And that's how he began to figure out the theory of relativity. But his teachers couldn't grasp his learning style, and so they tried to marginalize him and push him to the side. But of course, we know that that's not how history played out. But there's something fundamentally powerful about that, because we can't let how someone else interprets who we are define who we are, though. And you know that's especially relevant for us as Black men, though.
Word.
So Word. He has this quote, well, you know, the internet is savage. You know, it's a lot of lies on the internet. But there's this quote that purportedly comes from Einstein that I want to share with you. I had to put that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, no, that's good, though. That's good.
Let me know if you've heard this before, and then let me know how it hit you. It goes like this. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
I have heard it before. I have seen it before. I've also seen that it's been attributed to Einstein. And the way it hits me as a person who obviously is a husband and a father, who has worked as an educator and a counselor, what speaks to me is determining what's most relevant in the assessment of our genius. A fish's capacity or ability, we might argue it's minimally incompatible. At the max, it's unethical to judge a fish's capacity and its ability to climb a tree because it's not relevant and it's inherently a misfit. It's not a good fit. And so if we can find the right spaces where a fish can be placed to flex its literal muscles and demonstrate its capacity, then we're in a better position to judge and celebrate the genius of a fish.
Yeah, like to judge correctly, though, right?
To judge accurately. Yeah.
Yeah, so literally, if you can imagine, like, I know that the last 2 or 3 years has been really crazy, right? We've seen some things in our lifetime. We've seen some things in the past 2 or 3 years that we haven't seen in our lifetime and that our parents haven't seen in their lifetime. But I'm telling you, Mike, if I look outside my window right now and I see a fish in a tree, it's time to get off the planet. Like, it's a wrap. Because some is fundamentally off.
True story.
And I'm getting on the next Elon Musk, whatever his space program is, I'm the next volunteer. I'm getting off because something is off. We inherently know that when we see a fish, unless it's about to be on our plate, that this joker belongs in water. It is literally the fish's element. And the first part of understanding someone's genius is making sure that you have them in the right element, that you have them in the right lane. Fish are built for the water. They're streamlined. They have scales. They have gills. Everything about this fish is designed for water. And in the same measure, each of us is designed for a specific element, a specific environment where we will thrive. But if we're placed outside of that element and judged continually by how our dysfunction, and I mean, what happens to the fish that stays out of water too long?
Yeah, it expires. Yeah.
Right. And I'm not literally, like, in some instances, you know, that it can be that serious. But what I'm talking about dying is this genius that's on the inside of us. I see dying genius all around me. I feel like the sixth sense. Like I see dead people, right? I see genius dying around me, and I'm here to resuscitate, revive, and resurrect it through this workshop, because it hurts me to see people not reaching their potential. And it hurts me to see people accepting lesser of themselves because of the limitations that somebody else is putting on them. Like we all of us are guilty of this. Like when we come into an environment that's new, like, you know, I moved down here to the South a year and a half ago, and I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I said, when I came down here, I had some prejudged ideas about what I was going to, who and what I was going to encounter down here, because I had to keep myself safe. So I had some biases, some prejudice, some discrimination that I had in my mind. But the difference is, as I met people, I didn't force that on them. I allowed them to speak for themselves, and then me to gaze, okay, you're not what I thought. And more, the vast majority of people that I met were not what I was anticipating, but I was anticipating that to keep myself and my family safe. And so people do that. We do that all the time. We assess people and we make snap judgments to keep ourselves safe. But where we err is if we begin to act out that discriminatory behavior without giving them a chance to prove who they are themselves. That's like judging a book by its cover. So I feel like I've been talking too long. Let me know your reaction to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with it, and I appreciate the fact that you grounded it, even in all of our. You talked about yourself, but in all of our capacity to be biased, to be prejudiced, to possibly stereotype people for whatever reason. That many times, maybe not all, but many times that is prompted by something in us that is functioning as protective. Right. So when folks talk about, well, particularly Black folks or folks who are forced to live on low incomes, and they talk about, you know, having negative interaction with the police. Well, if you've had negative interactions with the police in one context, then your natural response is to protect yourself based on a set of experiences or stuff that's been handed down to you or handed across to you in your family system. You don't get Mr. Key for history, because if you get Mr. Key for history, then he's going to be X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden now I'm walking to class because my auntie had you for history, and I have all of these assumptions about who you are and how you might connect with me. And it's protective. I'm trying, like, yo, he not gonna harm me the way that my aunt says that he harmed her. So I appreciate you grounding it in that. And at the end of the day, I know Ibram Kendi, I saw a video clip with Ibram Kendi. He was doing a commencement speech, and he talked about what it means to be a critical thinker, and how it takes courage to be a critical thinker, meaning we have these ideas, grounded or not in reality, and we have to make a decision that when we're presented with evidence that suggests otherwise, how open are we to actually consider, like meaningfully consider, and pivot or reshape our worldview about whatever the thing is. And so, I appreciate that. And I think there's a lot to be said about your willingness to say, okay, I know this is functioning inside of me, but I'm going to try to take this experience and judge it on its own merit, and not based on the things that I thought or heard or somebody told me, but base my evaluation or assessment of it on its own merit, and then kind of move from there. So I agree, and I appreciate you saying that.
That's why I got you on the show, man. Not that you want to agree with everything I'm saying, but you're going to add some value to what where I'm already going. So I appreciate your response. There's this book that I'm working on right now. I'm helping this guy back in Illinois. He works with the police department out there, and it's called The Culture of Honor. And what he's trying to convey in this book is, it's not just a stereotype that Black people have on cops and vice versa. Like there's a narrative and a story behind why Black people view cops the way they do, and why some cops view Black people or minorities the way they do. And it links to dishonor. There's a dishonor that we give to people when we do that and don't give them a chance to prove themselves to us, but we put them in a box. And he was like, until we realize that dishonor, not dishonor, but this honor has to be inherent on both sides, we'll always have this clash. Because there's a history behind what we see when we see cops. There's a history behind some cops when they see Black people. Accurate or inaccurate, it's still dishonorable. And so what you were saying resonated because of that fact. Let's keep it moving, man, because I haven't even gotten into the 3 components of genius, man. We just vibing. So the 3 components of genius, the first one, which will help you find your element, are passion, talent, and purpose. Right now, I'm gonna just how we just deconstructed genius from its typical definition, and we've reconstructed it. I want to do the same thing with passion. I want to deconstruct it, because most of the time, how most people think of passion is not how it fits into this equation. It's not how it was given to me, and it comes from a book that I read, and I'll tell you the name of the book in a second. But what comes to mind when you think of this word? What words come to mind when you think of this word passion?
First word that comes to mind for me is inspiration. I think the things that the things about which we are passionate are many times, at least in my experience, I'll talk for myself, are the things that inspire me. And they could be, they are the things that that may keep me up at night in good ways, because it's consuming my thought life. It prompts me to want to talk about it with other people and share it. So yeah, the first thing I think of when I hear the word passion, I think of the things that are inspirational and meant to be cultivated and hopefully shared.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So what's your passion, Mike?
The things that inspire me are just being a good Black man, Black father, Black husband, and professionally a good Black educator and counselor. Those are the things that inspire me. I want to be what LaShawn and I talk about. For everybody with whom I'm in community, I want to be the right kind of help. Okay. And we have this running joke in my house, because it came when one of the kids was doing a task at night, like washing the dishes. And the dishes weren't washed very well, and LaShawn was just like, "Man, you the wrong kind of help, because you're supposed to get these dishes washed." Yeah. But the way that we kind of flipped that is like, no, but we want to be the right kind of help. And what does the right kind of help look like? And am I willing to pivot and adjust? Because if Reggie says to me, the right kind of help in this moment is to just listen and don't say nothing. Let me air this out. But on another day, he might be like, yo, the right kind of help is actually give me some feedback, because I can't, it's not helpful for me to stay in my head with these ideas and thoughts, and I need to bounce them off somebody who's willing to give me feedback. So it's really trying to curtail being the right kind of help. And I think when I'm gone and I ain't here no more, I want my closest friends, families, the people, again, with whom I'm in community, to be like, yo, Mike really tried to be the right, wherever he was, he definitely tried to be the right kind of help. And he ain't get it right all the time, right? But being the right kind of help. So those are the things that inspire me. And it comes out in a few different ways. It comes out as a researcher, as a professor, and writing, asking questions, and having the privilege to actually empirically investigate the questions that I have, and then be able to share them with audiences in journals and in books and at conferences and things like that. It comes out hopefully in my professional work as a counselor and a therapist. It comes like, obviously, and most importantly, it comes out in the context of my family and in my community. Being the right kind of help.
That sounds like something you need to put on a shirt, bro.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on it. You know, it resonates with people.
Yeah.
And I found that. So
Because it's a conversation starter. Because of course somebody's going to ask, okay, well, what is that? I've
yeah.
heard you use this word twice now, pivot, and what that alludes to me is a paradigm shift. And most of the time, when I think this whole workshop is a paradigm shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the way you're describing it and talking about it, I like how you're talking about it because it makes it sound like a paradigm shift is not just like something that happens once a month or once a year. You know, you've had this long seated thing and then you just have this paradigm shift. You make paradigm shift sound like a daily thing.
Yeah, man. And I agree with that. And I guess what I want to reiterate or maybe iterate for the first time is that pivot can be like something dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
Pivot can be 180 degrees, it can be 90 degrees, or it can be 15 degrees. Right. So when I think about pivoting, I'm like, pivot for me is synonymous with adjustment.
Yep.
And the people who know me the closest, they be like, yo, you can be real rigid about how you do X, Y, and Z. I have the same routine every single day. I get up, I open my phone, I look at a scripture, I write it in my to-do list, and then I make my to-do list based on what I think is priority. But then if things happen in the course of the day, I have to pivot. And sometimes it's very difficult for me to pivot from the things that I've written down to do and I prioritize to then prioritize something else. But it could be that simple or maybe not as significant, or it could be like, you know, for some people, it's like, I have to change careers. Like that's a huge pivot, right? You know what I'm saying? So when I talk about
that happened
pivot,
a lot at UD, man.
Right. So when I talk about pivot, I'm trying to convey that pivot can come in very drastic ways, and it can come in very slight ways. But for me personally, it's the willingness to do it versus staying rigid and inflexible because I have a particular kind of vision about how things should and could go.
I'm the same way, man. I have been traditionally and historically very rigid, but kids, man, kicked all that out of me. I was like, okay, I can't be rigid no more. I have to be flexible. But the interesting, this is a little bit of a tangent, but the interesting thing is now that my son is 14, he was raised by a rigid man. And so now he's rigid. And in my flexibility, we clash.
Yes.
And I'm like, you are the man, you are becoming the man that I raised as a rigid person, but I'm shifting now. And I need you to shift with me. People are like, why are you doing it this way now? I'm like, that's because I'm flexible.
There's a new way. There's a better way. Yeah.
Better way. And it might not be better. We might find that this was not the right way, but I'm like, be like Bruce Lee, brother. Like, be like water.
Be like water.
So just trying to, that links back to the fish metaphor, right? So I'm shifting this passion though, and I want to shift it from this to this. Typically, when people, if people had to associate an emotion with passion, they would associate love, right? We tend to tell kids, and we were told when we were young, hey, when you figure out what you want to do, just do what you love, right? We shifting though, we pivoting. Okay. I'm going to tell you and everybody that if you want to figure out what it is that you're meant to do and you want to lock into your passion, you got to find what you hate though. And this logic comes from a book by Mike Murdoch called The Assignment. And in this book, Mike begins to tell us, hey, look, what is your Popeye moment? Like, and you know, that they may fall on deaf ears for anybody.
Yeah, you're showing your age there, fam.
Right, we're showing our age. Right? But you know Popeye. Popeye would historically go through this little cartoon chasing olive oil for no reason that any of us could ever understand. And she had two brothers chasing after her, skinny as all get out, but Bluto would inevitably be beating up Popeye, beating him to a pulp. And he would reach into his chest, his skin tight shirt, and somehow pull out a big old can of spinach from his skin tight shirt. And you know it's about to go down. He's gonna say, I've had all I can stand. I can't stand no more. He's gonna bust this spinach open, which, you know, did he really need the spinach if he had the strength to bust open a can of spinach with his bare hands? But that's a whole nother what's up. But he would have this moment where he was fed up. He was like, I'm about to change. I'm on bottom and I'm about to flip it so that I'm on top. I've had all I can stand. I can't stand no more. And Mike Murdoch says, what is your Popeye moment? If you can figure out what it is that you hate, you're going to figure out what it is that you were meant to address and that you were meant to do something about, which then unlocks your assignment, which is why it's called The Assignment. He's like, we've all been put on this planet to address something very unique and very specific with a certain skill set. And we talked about certain skill sets at the beginning, but it's linked to what it is that you hate. And this is game changing, right? Mm-hmm. So let me tell you though, what this looks like in real time and how transformative it is. So I had a chance to talk with some boys, some young minorities, about 9 to 10 of them. They were in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, but these boys were all in the same class for an entire year. You know what this sounds like. We would have called it special ed back in the day. They were on an IEP, individual education plan program. And so the teacher, the principal was like, she knew me. She was like, hey, look, can you just come in and talk with these boys? I'm like, sure, absolutely. So, you know, I knew what I was getting myself into. Like, I knew that they were all labeled with several different things: ADD, ADHD, disruptive, you know, all these negative things that was making them feel stupid because they were a fish out of water, not able to climb this tree. And so the first thing I did, I came in and tried to affirm them, like, hey, man, like, did you all know that you're a genius? And they instantly scoffed at me, like, this guy, like, right. You just bring it here. You don't know who you're talking to. So they scoffed and laughed at me because they weren't used to, one, receiving positive affirmation. Mm-hmm. And so, but then, like, in the same breath, they was like roasting one another. I'm like, oh, so you are used to negative affirmation because you find that hilarious, but you were offended when I told you that you were a genius. So I said, okay, fine. Let me recalibrate and ask you a question. I was like, well, tell me what you hate. And the teacher at this point, you can see her visibly getting uncomfortable. Like, who do we let come in here?
Who gave him the keys?
Yeah, it's like they gave me the keys. I was like, I'm gonna unlock this. Tell me what you hate. And these boys, Mike, who could never agree on what to play with at the same time, when to play with it, they always argued and fussed. They all told me universally the same thing. Mm-hmm. What do you think it was?
We hate the way.
We talked about systems, right?
Yeah.
What system were they in that was making them feel like a fish out of water?
Right, in school. So we hate the way, what I thought it was, we hate the way we treated at school. Yeah.
They was like, we hate school, Mr. Key, now what? They thought, and they was looking at me like, yeah, we just wrecked your whole workshop. And I said, okay, cool. I'm glad you said that. Mm-hmm. I said, hey, look, if you're going to tell me that you hate school, but I'm telling you that the thing that you hate is the thing that you were put on this planet to fix, then I'm looking at 10 future educators. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, snap. They started, I was like, why are you backing up though? Like, come closer, like, listen to me. And I was like, I understand why you hate school, because school is making you feel like if you were to ask that fish, what would it hate? It would hate two things in my mind. The fish is talking, it's in a tree, so why not? Right. The fish hates the tree, and the fish hates being told like you are dumb because you can't climb this tree. Yep. And so that's a system that's in place, because it's when I think of this metaphor, I think of somebody continually coming back and telling this fish, you ain't climbed this tree yet, you dumb. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what these boys were experiencing. They weren't good test takers, standardized testing. And so I said, look, there are 8 different ways. There are 8 different learning styles. And I say each of you probably has one that's not being taught to you in school, because school teaches from like 3, like auditory, which is what we're doing right now, visual, and from a left brain, logical perspective. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you're probably kinesthetic. Like, you got to move around, but you're being told, sit down, stop moving. Mm-hmm. You're probably exploratory, expeditionary. You got to feel stuff. Keep your hands to yourself. You're probably a right brain thinker. You're creative. You got to like put stuff together in an abstract way, but you're being told like, do this math this way though. Mm-hmm. And so because you don't fit into this system and its lack of learning styles, complete representation of all learning styles, you're being made to feel like you're the problem. When in fact, the school, like the world, is broken. And so I told each of them, I said, if you take your learning style, and it's easy to find out what it is, if you take your learning style and then in your mind now, you're like, I'm an educator. You turn your learning style into a teaching style and become a teacher. Now you're plugging into the system and fixing what's not there. Yep. Or the brokenness is because that learning style has no representation. Yep. And when you fit into that learning, that teaching now you're going to reach somebody else who has the same learning style as you, and they're going to connect. And I was like, but we keep marginalizing the solution to the problem, because there's going to be a teaching shortage. And by teaching shortage, I mean the learning styles are not going to be represented because we keep marginalizing the future educators who are meant to fix it. Yep. And so, yeah, I'm like, you should hate school because it's broken and it's making you feel like you don't count. Mm. So, as an educator, man, how's that hit you?
Man, it hits me hard. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that those young men or boys had your voice and insight. I think not that I've heard of Mike Murdoch or The Assignment, that text, and not that I've heard posing a question, what you hate, but I have some familiarity with this notion of really, and it comes in the context of career development as counselors. We literally get trained in some way about the relationship between people's career and mental health, and that a stable career is a protective factor for experiencing mental health and wellness. And when there's career disruption, occupational a lack of fit, a lack of occupational fit, that has bearing on our mental health and well-being.
Yes.
Old school say, you can't work, you can't eat. Man don't work, man don't eat.
Yeah.
But if I can't work, or if I can't find a place that will value me in my work, then it prevents me from being able to eat. And Lord forbid, I have a family or a community to which I'm accountable. And the way I've heard that question posed kind of in a modified way is when we work with children and adolescents and trying to help facilitate them getting on a healthy, curious career path, as we ask them, literally the best predictor of helping some children find a viable career path is asking them, what problem do you want to fix?
Same thing. Yep.
Like, so I'm saying it's the same thing. Is I may not hate it. It may be a source of that kind of pain so much that I hate it. But whether I hate it or I see this persistent, influential, negative issue that says, yo, I got to do something about this.
You know what we say most of the time, Mike? I don't mean to interrupt you, but most of the time we end up saying like, somebody should do something about this.
Right.
If you find yourself constantly pointing at it like somebody, that somebody is you.
Yep. I totally agree. And I think, so I mean, to your question, man, it resonates with me deeply because those are the questions. Those are not just the more appropriate questions, but those are the questions that we all deserve to be asked.
Yeah.
Like we deserve, like that's a just, equitable question. Listen, the world ain't perfect.
Nope.
And it's imperfect in different ways for different people for a variety of reasons. But if you could pick 1, 2, or 3 things that you wanted to fix that weigh on your heart and in your head the most, what would they be?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might be like, yo, y'all need to get away from standardized tests.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I usually have bad test days, but that bad test day is not reflective of my academic capacity or potential. But y'all keep relying on these tests. Right? So I mean, it resonates with me deeply, man. And I wrote down Mike Murdoch, I wrote down The Assignment. So I got some reading to do.
It's tough. It's a thin book too. That's what I like about it too, because it was an easy read.
Right.
But it was powerful.
I like them.
Right. So this is revolutionary because it's not just relevant in the teaching industry. It's relevant in every sector of society where there's people that are involved, because there's always somebody that's being marginalized, that's being made to feel like, hey, look, I see this brokenness, but nobody's giving me a voice to let me to tell me that my voice is important enough to address it. And so because these are systems, the thing that we hate, or the problem that we want to fix is never small. So it can be small, but most of the time it's large enough, and it becomes a David and Goliath type of experience. And the thing of it is, once you know that you've been equipped, like when David first was going to go after Goliath, they tried to give him King Saul's armor, but he was like, this don't feel right. Like it's like, nah, give me that slingshot that I've been slaying, lions and bears with, and give me these 5 smooth stones. This is my element though. Give me this, and I'm gonna address this giant. And that takes us to the second part of the equation, which is talent. Because the talent that we have, which is generational, I could spend a whole other workshop about that. People who tell me like, I don't have any talent. I'm like, you're not looking hard enough, because it's in your hand already. It's already in you. Like, we recognize generational talent in athletes and in entertainers, but we don't see it operating the same way in us. It didn't just come out of you from nowhere. It came from your forefathers, right? And now you're in an environment and in a season and in a generation where maybe they didn't have the resources to fully develop it, but now you do. And this thing is on the inside of you, latent. And once you begin to manifest it, now you have your talent is this tool. that you can use to address this brokenness in the thing that you're supposed to be fixing.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And everybody has access to this. And so that's why everybody has their own unique genius.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and simply put, your purpose in life is real simple to figure out. I mean, it's simple theoretically.
Right.
Figure out what your talent is. What is this tool that you've been given? And then use that tool to address the problem that you want to fix, that you are put on this planet to fix. Because you're not meant to fix every problem, but there are some problems, you already said it, that they hit you a certain way. And most of the time it comes from a trauma from your childhood. And then when you see it operating in others, when you get older, you're like, oh, nah, I hate that. I'm gonna do something about that. I know what that felt like, and I'm gonna do something. Or I know how that made a person in my family feel, and I'm gonna do something about it. And so, that type of approach, that type of understanding and operation is another reason why I invited you on the show, because I know that this book behind you is your genius. So can you tell us about this book?
Yeah, man. And thank you so much for just giving us some airtime and just giving me the opportunity to talk about it. The book is called Black Fathering and Mental Health. That's the title, but the subtitle is Black Fathers' Narratives on Raising Their Children Across the Family Life Cycle. And I don't want to make it too deep because it's not deep. It's literally Black men. It's literally Black men and the children of Black fathers talking about being raised or raising their families at different points in their children's lives. I think the genius thing about this book is that I don't know, one, when Black fathers' voices have been given the opportunity to be amplified in this way, period. When's the last time you heard Black men openly and candidly talk about not just the experience of fathering, but considering their mental health needs in the process of fathering? And so it's an edited volume. So I want to be clear. I didn't write every chapter. I wrote a few chapters in it, but I rounded up my homies and my dear friends and some mentors, all of whom are mental health professionals. They are all professional counselors and or counselor educators, meaning teaching and counseling programs. And they all addressed 4 questions in every chapter that they wrote. I asked them to address who influenced their fathering style. I asked them, at the point at which they're writing, pre-fatherhood, raising young kids, raising adolescents, raising adult children, did they need any mental health support in the process? And if they did they seek it? And if they didn't seek it, why didn't they? Or if they did seek it, what did they learn in the process? And then the last question, I think it was 3 versus 4 questions. The last question I asked them to address was, because they're counselors, what would they tell mental health professionals, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers? What would they tell those mental health professionals if they had Black father clients at a similar juncture in their lives to know to be the right kind of help for those fathers? Recognizing it ain't generalizable. Everybody got a different story, but there might be some nuggets that are generalizable. And so that's what I have. And so I'm excited about it. I appreciate everybody who supported it. And I appreciate you for giving me a chance to shout it out a little bit.
Absolutely, man. Because I see it shining, man. It's real clear. And so this is what I'm hearing for you, man. Like this, Black men are more complex than we've been given a chance to be. Yep. And we are not a monolith. And what I see you doing is beginning to shed this image that we all hit the same tone, we discipline the same way. Even one father, I was telling you about how I was rigid, but now I'm understanding to be flexible. I'm not the same father that I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same father that my dad was, but I am a reflection of it. Both the things that he did right and things that he did wrong. I'm changing, I'm evolving, and in doing so, my son is changing, my daughter is evolving, right? And so we're not this monolith, and this is about to pivoting, right? And so I see you setting an example with this group of men, and I see this group of men growing too, outside of just the profession of counseling. And I see volumes of this book coming out and developing. I see, the series Black Love. I see even a series like that gives voice to, and I think there is actually something out there like that, but it doesn't mean that your approach to it can't be different and can't add to this voice so that there's not this monolith. Because the biggest problem that any group of people have is when only one voice is being heard, and you're like, well, that must be all that this person consists of.
Right.
But the fact that you're able to shift and to help people see that there's a way to pivot, there's opportunity to pivot, is going to help to broaden how Black fatherhood is perceived, even how Black sonship is perceived, and doing so in a way with multiple volumes of this book, multiple voices in this book, and multiple platforms, beyond the book, getting into media, getting into, podcasts, getting into, I just see it growing. And wow. It's a good place to be, because you're not at the center of it, but you have a group of people at the center of it that makes it even more diverse. And so, I really want to commend you for what it is that you're doing. And I can ask you this, but I already see that you said yes at the beginning that you understood your genius. And now that you see that this book that's in your hand, this writing skill that you have that we share, we're both wordsmiths, I believe, because you can't write a book and not be a that's not true, actually. I've seen some people write some books and I was like, you shouldn't have wrote that. Somebody else needed to clean that up for you, but that's not the case with you. And so I just want to say it again. What you're doing is genius, because genius starts with what did we say at the beginning? It starts with self-affirmation, but once you're affirmed, then you feel confident to turn outward and say, all right, who else can I impact around me by engaging them in their genius and engaging them with my genius, and realizing that one doesn't outshine the other, but they all complement.
Thank you, man. Rarely am I at a loss for words, because I talk for a living, in small groups, individually, and with larger groups. But I just have a lot of gratitude, and I'm grateful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So look, that's it, man. Like we've gotten through it. There could be more, man. Like we could have made this 2 hours, but I told you I got another one lined up in like 7 minutes, so I got to wrap this up. But this has been great. This has been exactly what I thought it was going to be. And so I just want to end with this. This has been Inkwell Spoken presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, motivational speaker, author, and publisher, Reggie Key. And this has been my genius guest, Dr. Mike Hannon. Mike, it's my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.